Every CEO and PE firm knows their churn numbers cold. But can they articulate why churn is continuing to move in the wrong direction? Most times the answer is no. And it's not because of lack of data. It's because the leaders are paying attention to the wrong data. Today, we're moving into the third link of the value chain, which is measurement. When measurement goes well, you have predictable control over your business, focused teams, consistent results, and a clear path to building an even better outcome. When measurement goes poorly, you miss projections, focus the team on the wrong things, and give your competitors time to eat your lunch. The first component of measurement is signal. Whenever leaders lose, and churn is loss, their instinct is to spring into action. And that drive isn't bad, it's natural. We have to fix the business. But what they typically jump to is data as opposed to signal. I know a team who did exactly that. Churn was climbing, and the leadership team had panicked and added over 20 dashboards that measured any metric you can possibly think of from all of the different parts of their platform. Instead of looking at the outcome they sold, which is more sales, great outcome, they started to look at tactical numbers. How many logins did each account have? How many accounts had X or Y feature turned on? And then they started setting customer call quotas and counting each CSM's daily calls with the customers. It just increased overwhelm. And you know what happened to churn? It stayed exactly the same. The crazy thing is, if they had first focused on delivery, they would have seen that the majority of their smallest clients never achieved the additional amount of sales that they had initially promised when selling them. And if they could fix that or adjust the expectation, that would have been more strategic and have a greater output than all of the additional activity they were asking their teams to do. And because they never fixed the value chain, they just added more noise on top of a broken structure. And none of that noise was connected to whether customers were actually getting more sales. That's the difference between noise and signal. Noise is the data you can typically easily gather, track, and put together in a health score. And signal is the 1, 2, 3, or 4 things that actually tell you whether your business outcomes you promised are being delivered and whether the right people are aligned around them. Here's what real signal looks like. At Wunderkind, we had a problem that most scaling companies face. We had so much data that we didn't know what actually predicted retention and expansion. So one incredible CSM who only had had a single client churn in her book ran a regression analysis across our entire customer base. She looked at 40 variables that we thought could potentially matter. And do you know the theme for the ones that came out as correlated? It was what we sold, the business outcomes, and who made the renewal decision. By the way, that CSM works with me at Lakeshore today because I love people that don't accept defeat. Now, getting back to it, those themes we covered were in 4 variables. 1, whether we had confirmed the customer's goals in the last 3 months. This was during a really up and down period for digital marketers. And so the goals could change in the blink of an eye. So it was really critical to reconfirm every 3 months. 2 was whether we had engaged with a senior stakeholder in the last 6 months. And by engaged, I mean live, meaning a call, a meeting, or an event. 3 was the percentage of the customer's total digital revenue that ran through our platform or was driven by our platform. And once that number crossed a certain threshold, they were far more likely to stay, easy for me to say. And 4 was ROAS. Were we still delivering the return we promised? Now, those 4 variables predicted retention and expansion better than any health score we could have built manually. And because they weren't measuring what our team was doing, they were measuring the actual value we promised and whether it was being delivered and whether the people who cared about that value were still engaged. That framework produced 12 consecutive quarters of really strong gross retention. And I want to be honest about something. You might hear about golden metrics like Slack that knew if X amount of messages were sent, they had a 96% retention metric. That's great, but not everyone has a single golden metric to point to. The closest we got was those 4 variables. In fact, if we had looked for one single metric, we probably would have chosen percentage of total digital revenue, but that alone did not produce the outcomes we wanted. It had to be the combination. That was what really mattered. Now, we also found out negative predictors, which are things that indicated risk regardless of how strong the other signals looked. Classic: stakeholder turnover and customers who had been with us for over 2 years, regardless of their revenue share. Reason for that: if people get used to a status quo, they're going to look at what you have done for them lately. So even if our performance was really strong, if they were with us for more than 2 years and they hadn't seen a bump in revenue, we knew we had some extra work to do. And then finally, of course, overall company performance of that client. For example, we had an account where we contributed to over 40% of their total digital revenue, but their total pie was shrinking. So that put us at massive risk, right? That's a risk that no single dashboard could have captured unless we really did the work to get into what were signals instead of noise. This signal work is nuanced. And we're going to go deeper on customer health, which is the full picture of positive and negative indicators and how to build a health score that actually predicts outcomes in a standalone episodes after this series, because it deserves way more than a few minutes and I want to give you really tangible examples. But the principle isn't just about having cleaner data. It's about measuring those 2 to 4 things that actually boil down to value: business outcomes and stakeholder alignment, not feature usage, not login rates, not 25 different inputs that feel like progress but don't actually predict anything. And when you measure the right things, everything else shifts. Your conversations with customers become more strategic because you're talking about outcomes instead of activity. Your bonus structures start rewarding the proactive work that produces the business results down the road, not the number of calls your CSMs logged last week. And the rest of your leadership team doesn't throw as much chaos in your way because you've proven that you're focusing on what matters. Now, here's a quick test for you. Look at the accounts that churned in the last 6 months. Was there an objective way to measure they had hit the outcomes that they initially purchased you for? And did they show up as unhealthy about 8 months before they gave notice of churn? If the answer to either of those is unclear or no, you may not be measuring signal. You're probably measuring noise. I'm Erin Stavi, and I'm the founder of Lakeshore Success. I'll see you on the next episode, which is going to wrap up this full value chain together. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss it.